It has been raining for the past couple of weeks. In that time, we have seen vehicles flooded here and there. So I am here to answer the question, what do you do when you find your car flooded? So you find your car submerged in water. First of all, and this goes without saying, water and electricity don't go together. So if the question is, should I start my car when it is flooded or should I not start my car when it is flooded? The simple answer is no, you should not start your car when it is flooded. That should be the last thing that you do. Now, that notwithstanding, several key factors come into play when you find your car flooded in water. Exactly how much water are we talking? How deep has your vehicle sunk in the water? Is the water in the engine? Is the water inside? So how much water actually matters a lot. The nature of the water, is it fresh? Is it salty? If it's a place like Mombasa, the water is definitely very salty. Is the water dirty or is it clean? Most likely it is not clean at all. It carries a lot of things with it, that is mud, sewage, you have paper bags in your engine and what have you. Now all these components can come into play in damaging some very key components in your vehicle. The key question is, what do you do? Your best bet is to tow away your vehicle. You're better off towing it away. Seeing that towing is pulling it away, your other best bet would actually be to flatbed it. You can put it into or onto one of these things. This thing is called a flatbed. I'm sure you've seen them around. You can put it on this flatbed and have it driven away to your mechanic or wherever you're taking it. Also, if say for example the place that the car is currently resting in has a lot of water and there's a nearby dry area, you can try pushing it there so that you can assess the damage. The key part here is to not let your car stay in the water longer than it should. You've already found it in the water. The first thing should be to get it out of that water. The longer your car is in the water, the longer the damage it sustains. You'll want to disconnect the battery. Toanisha hiyo kitu. Why it is important to disconnect the battery is because when your car is standing still, the battery is the main power source for your vehicle. So you don't want to be electrocuted while you're, when you're trying to touch the engine here and there. With that said, you'll want to remember what your physics teacher said in school. You'll need to use some very dry hands. Dry your hands, get you a good old piece of dry wood. Make sure you disconnect the terminal so that at the end of the day, the car is not connected to your battery. Actually, you do well to remove the battery from the car altogether. Now, need I say how intrusive water is? Water will get into every part of your vehicle. That's why I'm saying the longer your car is in the water, the longer the damage it will sustain. If the car is there for several hours, the water will enter into the engine, the interior, through the exhaust. It will enter into your engine oil. It mix in a brake fluid. At the end of the day, this is all a recipe for disaster. And I'm really talking disaster. It is not a small issue for your vehicle to be submerged in water. Now let us talk damages. How far back will a submerged car set you? Now a submerged car will set you several distances back. So first of all, you'll want to contact your insurance. The first thing that you do after you've taken your car out of the water, actually hata wewe ukipata tu iko kwa maji, call your insurance. Waambie mnajua aje ABCD may happen. My vehicle iko kwa maji sahi as we are speaking. Insurance notwithstanding, the easiest part to fix will be the interior. If the water has entered and seeped into your interior, you'll want to get all those things out. I'm talking the carpet, part of the seats. I'm talking parts of the dashboard. I'm talking everything that is below the waterline. You'll need to wash those things, dry them, and even scent them to avoid that, you know that smell that gets in your car once water has been inside and it's all smelling all stuffy. And at the bonnet is what you will have, is where you will have the most weight. This is where that question of should I start my car or should I not start my car comes into play. If you started your car, you will have the biggest problems because first of all, if you start your car, you ruin the entire electric system. I'm talking about the alternator, the fuse, we're talking about burnt wires and what have you. I'm also talking about hydrolock, which is actually the biggest issue. For a layman like myself, not much of a mechanic actually, Hydrolock is when water enters the combustion chamber of the engine, where the pistons are, those things that hit papa papa, and your vehicle keeps on moving. If the water enters that part and then you start it, the pistons will have to hit, and the pistons cannot complete a full hit because water is not compressible. Gas is, but water is not compressible. So they will bend to compensate, and once they have bended, now you have to replace those pistons. Now, depending on your engine size, if your vehicle is a V6, you have 6 ruined pistons. If your vehicle is a V8, you have 8 ruined pistons. Now this just adds on to the cost of the things that you need to replace. Still on the pistons, the spark plugs, and you'll be very lucky if the engine block is still intact, because that hit might not be very easy. You might need to replace the clutch, and the fluids will have to be replaced. Actually, most fluids. I'm talking about brake fluid, I'm talking coolant, even wiper water. The fuel itself will also need to be replaced. Steering fluids, just think of fluids. All those fluids that were touched by water, you will have to replace them one way or the other. Light fittings, I'm talking about headlights, rear lights, all those fittings will have to be drained and dried. Fuel system, injectors, the fuel pump, you might have to replace that entire system actually. Exhaust system and catalytic converter sphere, muffler, you will have to replace that system. In time, the suspension components will also have to be replaced if they were corroded enough, especially if the water was salty. Now, I cannot emphasize on this more, but if your car has been flooded, especially if it is a lot of flood water, it will never be the same again. That car will never, no matter how much repair you eventually do, it will never go back to the same. You will never experience the right quality, the sublimity, and how your vehicle used to be. And not to forget that it will become an unceasing series of repairs. You will never cease doing repairs, from the suspension to the door handles to the hinges to the seals to things that will be corroded in time, the plastics, the rubber, not to forget the rusting on the metal parts, the paint itself. Itaanza kuchakachaka at some point, it will not even look that good. When it comes to insurance, you will need to thank God that your vehicle has comprehensive insurance, because then it might be covered against flooding. Otherwise, third party will not. And I'm talking about might, because these insurance people might come and see that maybe the circumstances were negligent, avoidable, or what have you, and they might not pay. Now, if you are randomly driving and you didn't expect a heavy downpour, but then here we are and it is really flooded and you have to drive your vehicle, always remember, if you're driving your vehicle through flood water, do not stop driving. Just keep driving. The faster you drive out of the water, the better. Also, it matters how deep the water is. If the water is too deep and you don't have to drive, don't drive. You don't have to put yourself through this damage. If it is absolutely unnecessary. Also remember, the insurance people will determine whether the damage was avoidable or unavoidable. Now that we're talking about unavoidable driving through floodwater, let us look at this video.
Oi. خلاص. هذا اللي بقى.
Time and time again, we have seen these things happen. The insurance might not actually compensate for this kind of fault. This was avoidable. You didn't have to drive through this water. You shouldn't have. And time again, we as Kenyans have seen these things happen over and over again. So it goes without saying that you shouldn't drive through such water. This vehicle was bound to fall over at any time because of several things. First of all, let us talk about tires. There's a very small margin of the tire that is touching that ground At any given time, you have four wheels and very small space of that tire that actually touches the ground. Not to forget the suspension. Your vehicle is not mounted on the wheels. It is suspended. Suspended being the keyword, meaning that some of the weight has actually been broken by the suspension itself towards the ground. Against the flood that is hitting on the side of this vehicle will drop. What I am trying to say in very many words is don't do this. So the takeaway is, if you can avoid your vehicle being flooded, don't get it flooded. However, if it gets flooded by mistake, don't start it, get it towed away, call your insurance, and do absolutely everything to make sure it is repaired. Well, and this has not been said by me, but the hard truth is, after you have repaired your formerly flooded car, sell it. But then again, don't buy a formerly flooded car. It might cost you more. This has been an episode of the Motor Magazine. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share. You can also check us out on Twitter at @the_carplanet, on Instagram at couple_anet. Also leave a comment down below and ask any question. I will be happy to get back to it. My name is Michael Ongeshi. Have yourselves a good day.